Here we have the start of our young river, the stream starting to flow. Now we can see the full young river and start to see features of young rivers. Here we see our point bar along the bottom, and then along the top we see our cut bank, and then we see the end of the river, which is the mouth. The mouth is basically just the end of the river. It's where a river flows into a larger body of water, like another river or lake. Typically, rivers like this would have a very low sinuosity, like lower than 1, and then a very high gradient or slope. A real life example of this would be like the Colorado. Younger rivers like this typically have a very fast discharge and a V-shaped valley. Now we get to see the start of our mature river. Now that we see water flowing through the mature river, we can actually start to see features going through. Here we see a meander. This is also another good example of a cut bank and point bar. We see along the top the water moving quickly and cutting away at the bank, and then we see the sand and other stuff getting deposited onto the bottom, creating that point bar. Here we see a potential cutoff. The potential cutoff can become an actual cutoff when the river erodes away at the land between the two bends. Now we can see the actual start of the cutoff. Now we get to see a delta. Deltas are wetlands that form as rivers empty their water and sediment into another body of water, like oceans, lakes, or seas. Mature rivers like this typically have a medium gradient. They're not super steep, but they're not super shallow. They have a U-shaped valley and about a medium speed discharge. Their sinuosity isn't very high, but it isn't very low. It's like maybe a 1.3 to 2. And an example of mature rivers or real life are like the Ohio River or the Mississippi. Now we get to move on to our old rivers. Old rivers typically have a bunch of meanders and oxbow because they've been around for so long. The river has just carved away at all the sides. Here we get to see an example of the oxbow. The oxbows used to be parts of meanders of the rivers that got cut off and turned into their own lakes. Now we need to talk about floodplains. Floodplains are an area or low-lying ground around the river that form mainly of river sediments and are the actual areas that are going to get flooded in case the river floods. Old rivers like this have a very low gradient and slope. They're not very steep. They have a very wide U-shaped valley and a slow discharge, and they have a high sinuosity closer to 3. An example of an old river in real life would be the Nile River.